on? I just did 15 minutes worth of video and realized that the stupid thing wasn't even recording. So, hello. This is part 3 of Growing Up Mormon. We left off in part 2, and I will put in the description below the link to that video because they need to be watched in order instead of out of sequence. We left off when I was 12 years old and our house had just been robbed in June. This would have been 1974, June 1974. And I was worried about my stepfather-to-be, my mom's fiance, coming back and finishing when he didn't do the first couple times he sexually assaulted me when I was 10. And it got to the point where I had started junior high school, 7th grade, middle school. And we lived 1/10 of a mile short of the 2-mile minimum that was necessary for riding the bus to the school. So I had to walk. And I actually carried a little paring knife. The blade was about this big, wrapped up in a napkin in my backpack, purse, whatever it was I carried. I don't even remember. And I was always constantly looking over my shoulders to see if anybody was following me because I was afraid he was going to come back. And at my school at that time in Southern California, they didn't check for knives or weapons because the kids didn't carry that stuff. And I wasn't carrying it at the school for kids at school. It was for if anybody was going to follow me. And I would walk a different route home every day or a different route to school so that I wasn't creating some kind of a pattern for somebody to stalk me. I mean, that's kind of crazy to have to think about when you're 12 years old starting junior high school. And when I'd get home, my mother was at work, and there was just the two of us. By this time, Sybil had moved out on her own. I was, she would have been 21, so she's 9 years older than me. So the first thing I would do is look to see if the bedroom that faced out by the patio, by the porch, if the blind was up, because when the house was robbed, the blind was up because they were in there. And then they saw me and they ran. And then I would go into the door and I would start yelling out loud, if you're in here, you better leave because I'm going to kill you. And I would go straight to the kitchen and grab a big butcher, the blade was this big, butcher knife. And I would go and look in every closet and every nook and cranny of the house where somebody could hide. And I was ready to fight, thinking if he ever came back, I was going to kill him. But that was also living in constant fear that might happen. As a 12-year-old, okay? That was what my life was like. When you're 12 in the Mormon church, you start the young men, young women's program. And the women are beehives. That's what they are. They're beehives. For 12, 13 years old, they're beehives. They call us beehives. And on Wednesday nights, for an hour and a half, 7 to 8:30, we would go and get lessons on being mothers, being pure, being morally clean, not having premarital sex. I remember making a list when I was 12 of the goals that I wanted to do when I grew up. And I wrote on there that I wanted to go on a mission. Because we're told there's 3 missions of the church. And the first one's proclaiming the gospel, and that's why the church's missionary program is so important, is you're out proselytizing, knocking on doors, finding people to teach the gospel to, the missionary lessons so that they can be baptized to join the church. Then the second mission is perfecting the saints, and that's the missionary lessons, getting a church calling, going to the temple almost every week or at least once a month, And once you do your own ordinance work in the temple for yourself, you do it for dead people. Okay, and that's where the third mission of the church is, and that's redeeming the dead. They're those big temples that you see, like we live near San Antonio. San Antonio has one. I think Dallas has got one. I can't keep track how many there are anymore because there's so many. Those temples are where they do baptisms for the dead. They do marriages for the living, but they also do sealings for the dead. And first of all, you have to take your washing and anointings and endowments. And that's a commitment that you make to turn over your talents, your time, talents, and money over to the church, to perfecting and growing the church. But you take that endowment ceremony, it's a 2-hour ceremony, and then you go back to do it for dead people. And usually it's people in your ancestry. My family is, like I explained early on, is rich in the Mormon church, so all my family's work's been done, and sometimes they've been done 3 and 4 or 5 times because the records aren't kept very well. People that are converts to the church that have ancestry that's not in the church, they're really ripe for going to the temple and having work done, but they have to file paperwork to do that. And that's a big deal. The church has actually been sued by people who are Jewish because their ancestors, somehow their work was done by zealous Mormons wanting to get their work done, didn't have authorization to do so. Okay, so that's what goes on in those places. So when I was 12, I said I wanted to get married in the temple, but I said I wanted to go on a mission because I thought I wanted to do anything a man could do. Why not? And at that time, their attitude toward women was, if you're 21, you can go. If you don't have anything better to do, you're not in school, or you haven't been married, you can go on a mission. They didn't encourage it, and I wanted to go. I wanted to go proclaim the gospel, which was interesting. And then to, like I said, get married in the temple. And I actually started drawing pictures of temples that did not exist. I would think, oh, there should be a temple in Nauvoo to replace the original Nauvoo temple, which there is now. There's a Nauvoo temple. And I drew this picture of the Nauvoo temple. It wasn't very good, and then I drew of Tokyo. There should be one in Tokyo, and I think there is one in Tokyo now. Or I drew one of Atlanta, and now it's interesting that there's temples in those cities that at that time, there was only 16 temples at that time, but I drew these pictures of these in Hong Kong, of these pictures, these temples that I thought should be in these cities. And I don't have them anymore, otherwise I'd show them to you, but those were my goals at 12 years old. And I don't think in my other video I said earlier on that when you're in primary, that's the kids from 3, 4 until 12, they're in primary, it seems like. Gosh, I remember when I was 8 years old, my mother volunteered me to speak in Sunday school. And at that time, Sunday school was for an hour and a half in the morning, and then we went home for lunch for an hour and a half, and then went back to the church for sacrament meeting for an hour and a half. So you're spending 3 hours in church just for those 2 meetings. Where now 1980 they consolidated them, and when I get to that point, I'll explain that and explain why. But my mother volunteered me to give this 2.5-minute talk in Sunday school. And I couldn't say, no, I don't want to. I didn't want to. I didn't like her volunteering me. But I worked on the talk, and it was a 2.5-minute talk. And we had all these books at home that were published by Bookcraft or Deseret Book. 2.5-minute talks, 2.5-minute treasure, Golden Nuggets of Thought. All these books, can't even get them anymore, I don't think. And they had all these little stories in them and little nuggets of thoughts that you could add into your talk. And usually they would tell you what you were going to talk about. It would be on the theme. There was a theme each sacrament meeting in Sunday school would have a theme. And they would tell you it's going to be on such a person's talk, on Dallin H. Oaks, who's an apostle. Now he's in the first presidency. Do it on his conference talk, 1960, whatever, blah, 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 because it was talking about something else. You didn't get to pick your topics. And my mother, who's obsessive compulsive, she would actually sit there. She'd help me write out the talk, have me write it out, and then she'd have me stand up to give the talk, pretend like I'm going to the pulpit to give the talk. She would sit there with a pad of paper and a pencil. She would mark every but, and so. And if you're in Toastmasters or a public speaker, you'll know that this is a habit that they do. It's counter. My mother had me doing this at 12 years old, okay? She had always wanted to be a public speaker. She never went to Toastmasters because she was absolutely terrified of public speaking. The Mormons will ask you, anybody, to give an opening prayer or a closing prayer at the beginning of any meeting, and they'll do it on the spot. She would just break down and cry because she could not speak in public. So she wanted me to be able to get over that. And so that's why she would have me go over this, and she'd have me almost memorize what I was going to talk about, so that when I got up to the pulpit to speak, I would look, and there's 150 people in the congregation. I could look out over the congregation and look at people in the eye, and I would start reading my talk or look up, barely looking down to read. And everybody was just flabbergasted at how well I gave a talk at 12 years old. And I like that attention from especially the adults. They were like, gosh, no wonder a 12-year-old does that. Well, it's because of my mother. But I would volunteer after that. Every time they would ask, who wants to give a talk in sacrament meeting? Well, yeah, my hand went up because I wanted to give a talk. And she had helped me write my talks. So I enjoyed doing that. It got me a lot of attention and respect for doing that. And then our youth choir regrouped, 12 years old, regrouped. First time we had a youth choir in, gosh, I don't even remember how long it had been. And I like to sing. I can sing. And I love being able to sing with the choir. It was great. So anytime we would sing an Easter, we'd sing Christmas. It was fun to be able to do that. I like being up in front of people. I noticed that I had no fear of getting up and speaking in front of people or singing. And the first Sunday of the month is testimony meeting, when you get up and proclaim your devotion to the church is true, Jesus is the Christ, the Book of Mormon's true, Joseph Smith was the prophet of the Restoration, whoever the prophet was at the time is the prophet, blah, blah, blah. And at that time, they had a microphone going around through the chapel. You didn't have to go all the way up to the stand. And I'd bear my testimony. And actually, I think I did that first. And that was what made me realize I liked talking in front of people, and I had no problem with it, that I'd be able to volunteer to give a talk, because I didn't want somebody else volunteering for me. That was the issue with when I was 8. So my Sunday school teacher really liked me, and my Beehive teacher, well, it was Mom Taylor. You heard me talk about her when I was in my other series, my MLM journal series. I lived with her while I was getting ready to go on my mission. After I got out of the Army, because she was like a mother to me. Anyway, she was my Beehive teacher. No, she wasn't. She's my mime maid. That's the next story. That's 2 years later. What am I saying? Beehive was 2 other different ladies. Anyway, the adults loved me. Okay, my peers. I had one friend that was my best friend. The other girls, I think they were jealous, honestly. They either jealous or they felt intimidated, okay? Because I was this pure, chaste, clean thing that preached whatever the church taught. And I would, but when I went to girls' camp, this is what was funny. See, every summer we had girls' camp for a week. I um, I remember dropping my camera and the film. It broke open and the film fell out, and I remember saying, "Oh shit!" And everybody looked at me like I was garbage. And I was just thinking, "What? You're not allowed to say shit?" Which is funny because we didn't swear in my house. If you said the word sex, you got your mouth slapped. So like shit, I don't know why I thought it was okay to say shit because I never heard any of my family say that. But I did at girls' camp, and I learned right away. Oh God, you don't talk like that up here or around any of these people. So that was interesting. Yeah, so 2 years of that, and then middle school. I'm going into high school, ninth grade, which the high school was a little bit closer than the middle school was. Still walking. By this time, I'm not carrying a knife anymore because I'm not afraid of somebody. I still am looking over my shoulder. I look over my shoulder to this day, okay, to see if people are following me. I do. I do. Going even from my car to the grocery store with my son, I will look and see if people are following me, okay, because that damage was done and it's really hard to overcome that. But the next 2 years, then I was a mime aide in the young women's program, and that's when Mom Taylor, she was my teacher, and that's where I had girls in the class. I knew I know now looking back that they were jealous and they felt intimidated by me, but they were snobs and they were very judgmental. The thing was, they were doing things the church didn't teach, like screwing around with their boyfriends or drinking alcohol and smoking out in the church parking lot, and I would chastise them for it. Like I said, the adults loved me, but my peers, they did not like me. And I was the president of the class. Okay, so we're at 1976, and I'm going into high school. Okay, so when you're in high school, you start the early morning seminary program, which is at 6:30 in the morning every day, Monday through Friday. If you live in Utah or Idaho, the seminary building is right there on the church or the school campus, so you can just walk right from seminary to school. Not where I grew up because the church was 2 miles away from the high school. My mom had to go to work at 7 in the morning, so we had somebody come pick me up. It was one of the little snobs in my class, her father, because he taught the adults in the morning, and we'd ride, and then we had another family that would take us to the school. It was a big deal. It was a big hassle. I hated getting up that early in the morning. And once I started putting on wearing makeup, which I was allowed to wear makeup in ninth grade, I would I couldn't get my makeup on before leaving the house, and I would end up ditching my seminary class to go in the bathroom and put my makeup on for the day. Now, my first ninth grade, we studied the New Testament, and my teacher was a really good teacher. He'd just gotten off his mission, and he was very passionate, very convicted, really good. And so I went every day that year. But my sophomore year, and this is funny because the teacher was a really good teacher. He was very laid back. I was just so tired of getting up that early, being expected to get up that early in the morning, and I would go ditch and go put my makeup on in the bathroom. Didn't do it the first year, but the second year, and that year we were studying the Doctrine and Covenants, which is church history. And I didn't want to hear about church history. I didn't care about it at that point. Gosh, I had got my hair cut a couple weeks ago. Anyway, I just was losing interest. You think about that. You're 14 years old, 15 years old, and you're supposed to go to this place for an hour every day, Monday through Friday, before going to school, which I believe kids are in school too long to begin with, and they've done studies on teenagers that have said that they do better starting school at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. than what they make them do. This is why a lot of the kids have a lot of the issues they do, teenagers. So I didn't like being there. I didn't want to go. But my mom made me. And because I was the president of the Mime Maids, I was expected to go. So I had to set this example. And by 15 years old, this was my first suicide attempt. And I think I'm at 20 minutes on this video. And I'm going to stop here so that this is the third one, video 4 will be going on from there. And I'll stop it there at, this is 1976, ninth grade in high school, growing up Mormon. And if you feel inclined to comment, please do. Yes, I know it's weird. I've said this before. It was weird growing up, but that's the whole point I'm trying to make. And I'm trying to show how I was indoctrinated. And then later I'm going to make correlations with behavior patterns. That was what caused me to be so attracted to multi-level marketing so many times, as well as some other things like timeshares. And anyway, yeah, if you feel inclined to comment, please do. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you feel inclined. And thank you for watching.